This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Risdall. This has been, in case maybe you hadn't noticed, a quiet week in economic data, and the Federal Reserve is in its quiet period before its meeting next week. So that means we've got some breathing room to go back to a speech that Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller gave last week at the New York Association for Business Economics. A speech entitled Monetary Policy at a Crossroads, by the way, but a speech in which there was one word repeated 10 times.
Inflation expectations today seem well anchored. Inflation expectations are re-anchoring inflation expectations.
Not inflation expectations, but anchored. Now, you, being a normal person, might understand it in relation to boats.
I don't like boats. Water scares me.
I am not a sailor. People say, hey, let's go on a cruise. Nope.
Yeah, same, but their aquaphobia aside, we called those people for their economic expertise. John Veitch is Dean of the School of Business Management at Notre Dame de Namur University. Julie Smith is a professor of economics at Lafayette College, and Karen McDaniel is an economics professor at Arizona State. Anchors on boats help keep you generally in one spot if waves and wind spin you around.
The drift is anchored by that heavy piece of metal resting on the ocean floor.
It's what central bankers mean when they say inflation expectations are anchored that we are going to explain today.
What we're talking about is that people's beliefs about inflation might move around a little bit, but they're never going to go that far away from the Fed's 2% inflation target.
We haven't been at that target, I will remind you, in more than 5 years. The latest reading of core PCE, the measure the Fed watches most closely, was 3.4%. Here's Karen McDaniel at ASU.
The actual rate of inflation is important, but even more important is what we expect the inflation rate to be in the future.
And that's where this whole anchoring thing comes in. As you know, because we say it all the time, where consumers think inflation is headed matters a lot for the Fed's ability to control it. If you believe, for instance, that refrigerator prices are going up, you'll be more likely to buy a new refrigerator now, thus increasing demand and pushing prices higher. And also probably you would ask for a raise to be able to afford things like new refrigerators. It is a dangerous cycle. But if you expect inflation to eventually go back down to 2%,
that makes the Fed job easier.
It doesn't mean that inflation or expected inflation can't move a little bit, but what it does mean is that inflation is going to return to where it is supposed to be.
So that's what it means to have inflation expectations anchored. Now, just to torture the nautical metaphor we started with a little bit more, what you might well ask is the heavy thing at the end of the rope that is doing the anchoring.
Credibility, trust, understanding.
Just the belief that the Fed will act to bring down inflation can help stabilize prices. Fed Chairman Kevin Warsh has been trying to emphasize that commitment in his public statements so far because right now the winds of this economy, like those tariffs that Gretchen Blau and I were talking about and the war in Iran and all of that AI spending, have created some stormy seas.
The waves of uncertainty hitting consumers are basically causing the boat to move.
And in the short term, we consumers, do expect prices to rise. The New York Fed's survey of consumer expectations last month clocked our inflation expectations over the next year at 3.7%.
But if you look further out, they're not that out of line with the Fed reaching the 2% inflation target.
So markets are telling us that inflation expectations appear to be anchored.
And part of Chairman Warsh's job over the next months and maybe years is to make sure they stay that way.
Before he was appointed, the credibility of the Fed was really in question with a Trump appointee. I think that since he's come in, he's actually shown actions that build credibility.
He has talked, for instance, about having, and this is a quote, no tolerance for persistent inflation, and he has tried to assure people he will act independently of the White House.
Whether that lasts is an open question.
It is, at least right now, the most important question surrounding the Warsh Fed, because without credibility, without trust that the Fed is going to fight inflation when it has to, well, anchors away, right? Thanks again to John Veitch at Notre Dame de Namur, Karen McDaniel at ASU, and Julie Smith at Lafayette College.